Welcome to the Fine Print, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Caleb Teskey, coming at you this morning with an early interview, which I don't normally do, but you got to take them where you can get them here. And this is going to be great, man. I've been trying to get these guys on the show for over a year now, and I'm super excited. We finally put it together. I do want to, before we get into all that, I do want to just apologize to Tom Durfee. I accidentally erased his interview. The first time I've ever done that. I'm going to have to repost that up on my YouTube. If you guys can't find it, it's because I was an idiot and I deleted it. I also want to thank my guest from last night. Really great interview with John Rogers from Farmers Underground. Just a great guy. Gives a killer interview. Nice work, John. Also, tomorrow I've got Dr. Anna Schwabe coming on, and we're going to nerd out on some cannabis research that she's been working on. We also got a number of other great interviews. Miguel Lopez coming back. Alex Miller, the whistleblower from Trulieve in Florida. Antoine Mordican from Alabama. We got Trim Stars coming up. I got Carly Bader from Willow Industries. They do ozone remediation. That'll be super cool. And then I got Josh Swider from Infinite Chemical Analysis Labs in California, which is the largest testing lab in the country. Pretty excited to have them on. Great lineup of guests here coming. And here we go. Tonight, this morning. It's not tonight. I'm used to tonight. Let's just bring them out. Wham, bam. It's Nathan Liberty and Keith Griswold. Green Mountain Scientific, right down the road here in Morrisville. Gentlemen, thank you for being here with me today.
Hey, thanks for having us, Caleb. I appreciate it, man.
Cool. And I want to do this here. Whoops. We're going to slide you over there. Boom. Before we get going, I was wondering if I could get a 5-minute life story out of both of you guys.
Yeah, sure. I grew up over in the Adirondacks in New York. Had family over in the Saint Albans area, so I was pretty familiar with Vermont from a pretty young age. We came over back and forth, Burlington, etc. I moved around quite a bit from Phoenix to Jersey to California for quite a while. I was in a band, and we did the move around and do what we could thing for a while, and then moved back to New York. I met my wife outside of Syracuse in a Watertown area of New York. And we decided to move to Vermont, and we bought a farm in Saint Albans. This is about in 2017. And we decided to buy this. It's a smaller hobby farm. I guess you'd call it. It's about 6 acres, barn. It's nice. I decided to get into hemp. I started as a cultivator. Met with some other people that kind of trained me on the other side of the industry, more of the sales and consultation side of the industry. And basically, from there that was it. I immersed myself into the industry and have done so since up until now. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Keith?
All right, great. So born and raised in northern New Jersey. Similar to Nate's past, I've actually actively played in bands for most of my high school and college years. Started getting into the academic side of chemistry and mathematics towards the end of my undergraduate career. Ended up going to graduate school for a focus in organic chemistry. I actually spent 6 years in Boston, going to Boston College. Following that, moved back to New Jersey, worked primarily in pharmaceutics for a little under 10 years, anywhere from research and development into commercialization of pharmaceutical agents. Then moved into food and beverage, worked at PepsiCo R&D in Westchester, New York for a little under 10 years. At which point I'd actually met my wife in New Jersey, got married, settled down, had a little bit of a family. Always kind of had the itch for the cannabis industry. Essentially started in testing. That's sort of where the core of my skill set centered. So in 2018, moved the family up to Brattleboro, Vermont, and opened up one of the first cannabis testing labs in Vermont. And then essentially just morphed.
Oh, shit. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I didn't know that. That's cool.
And then, essentially kind of morphed into product formulations, primarily looking at sort of unique product formulations, product applications, how we can incorporate cannabis, for unique delivery systems, basically fast acting modes of delivery, essentially everything, almost everything that's non-flower, I would say sort of became my interest. So yeah, just last year, started up Green Mountain Scientific with Nate, so we can encompass all of the skill sets, that we put together from the cannabis industry in our past lives, and basically have essentially an innovation company.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I feel like last time I came to visit the lab, Nate pulled down your PhD thesis like from up top there.
He loves when I do that.
Would you tell us a little bit about your research, Keith?
Yeah, sure. So it's and just to clarify, the PhD, it's actually just a master's that I ended up taking. But yes, no, I'll take that. So my graduate research actually revolved around the regioselective functionalization of complex natural products. Essentially a fast and efficient way to access new drug candidates.
How did that go? Did they like your research? Yeah.
Yeah, it was academic. I got the degree.
Yeah.
It sounds fancy, right?
There's a lot of big words there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nate, I want to go back to you for a minute.
Yeah.
When we first met, you told me about your work in the hemp game, and what I'd like to do is maybe do a little bit of a dive into what you were doing there and sort of how you decided to transition into the legal cannabis market here in Vermont.
Oh, for sure. So when we came to Vermont, my wife and I, my intentions always were at some point in one shape or another to get involved in cannabis. I had been guerrilla growing since I was 14, maybe 15. I already had a passion for cultivation, specifically outdoor cultivation. I never had a lot of opportunity for indoor cultivation. So I always had to kind of make do with the elements in the outside and, things of that nature. So when we came over, I started networking myself as much as I could anyway, because it's somewhat new. In 2017, there wasn't really even a hemp program yet, not until 2018, actually, which fortunately I did jump on, right from the get. And, so the first year I ended up growing, I think it was like 2.5 acres of hemp. And it was decent stuff. It was totally different then, because in 2018, you could have basically named your price for a pound of hemp because nobody had grown it. Nobody had it. There wasn't much accessibility, but it was a new thing. CBD in particular was becoming this new hot, word that was going around, and people wanted to make products, and they whatever. Accessing hemp and having the ability to actually get CBD was incredibly difficult in 2018. So whatever I grew that year, I absolutely had zero issue selling, and I actually did pretty well with it. However, in 2019,
I was going to say, I know it got weird there, right? Yeah.
2019, they call it the green rush, right? And that's really when I think everybody kind of started thinking they could get wealthy from growing hemp. And there was this mentality of just grow it and you'll make the money. I would talk to people that didn't even know they had to harvest it or dry it or prepare it. And they would literally just grow it and then be like, okay, now what? And I would look at them like, are you trying to ask me what do you do now that the plant's finished? And many people really had no clue. They had no drying space. They had no capabilities of harvesting even an acre of hemp, and some were growing 5, acres of hemp. And that's substantial amount of biomass. So what ended up happening is the market flooded. As everybody knows, it got really bad. And we're not just talking on a state level. We're talking on a national level that the market just unbelievably bloated itself. And it became a challenge because what my buyers had been the previous year were not even the same people anymore because of the access they had. The pricing was completely, thrashed. When I was making 500 a pound, I would be lucky if I was pulling in 200 on hand trimmed smokable hemp flower, which
Wow.
as anybody knows, that's not a profitable, game at that point. So I had to get creative, and I had to start really digging in, and I would literally sit there for 8 hours a day, calling state by state, reaching out to different buyers. My God, everything from, dispensaries or retailers at that point, from any states that were possibly selling it, on and on and on. And I did this for probably 2.5 months before I met someone who I'm actually going to give a little shout out to. He's not a Vermonter. He lives in California. His name's Andrew Seagrave. And Andrew is this really great guy who I actually ended up partnering with, but he kind of saw my problem, and not just my problem, but all the farmers in Vermont that had, grown all this hemp and had all this beautiful stuff, but nowhere to go. He was working within that realm as a sales guy. And I don't like using this word, but essentially he was a broker. And a lot of people get turned off with that word, but what people don't realize is they're incredibly crucial in a market, specifically a market as saturated as hemp was. They're the guys that know who the buyers are. And yes, they make a percentage off the sales, but they're also moving product for people that just have no other way of doing so. Sure.
And like you said, sorry to cut you off, but I feel like a lot of people got into that without really any experience. And so then, and like you said, they didn't even have drying space and things like that. So having someone to broker a deal for you might be super helpful in that kind of situation.
Well, yeah. And that's really what happened is, so Andrew kind of took me under his wing, and obviously first he wanted to move my product. He really liked it, and he helped me get rid of all of it. And I survived, but at the same time, once my product was gone, he still had other markets, whether it was international or even within the country, that there was still a need with his people. So we started working with other Vermont farmers, and I would act as kind of a representative, and I would go inspect the product, check it out, have testing done, send over COAs and all this stuff to Andrew. And then we would start, basically, doing what we could to move as much as we could through Vermont. And we did that for quite some time. I worked up in hemp up until the legal market actually took hold for the recreational side. I did do some contract work for other companies, whether it was consultation or simply just moving the product. That was really what I did up until, Keith and I formed this partnership. So yeah, that was my experience with hemp. I did continue cultivating up until 2021. I think that was the last year I grew hemp. And then, after that, I licensed as an outdoor recreational grower, and that was it for me for hemp.
So how did you guys meet? I'm going to throw this one at Keith.
Contract we were working.
What's interesting is we both entered the Vermont cannabis market around the same time, except actually never really crossed paths for the initial 5 years. Interestingly enough.
I'm super north, and Keith was super south of the state, so we never really.
But we knew the same people, ran in the same circles, that type of thing. However, up until 21 into 22, we were doing some consultation work for the same company here in Vermont. And that's how we were introduced to each other.
Cool.
And realized quickly that we had similar visions, similar philosophies,
similar backgrounds. Really, that it was just we were a good fit, right from the get, and we both offered skills the other didn't have, and that compatibility is really what we saw being something, more than just consultation work, at that point.
And here comes a shameless plug. I like to slap this up I'm with Nathan Liberty and Keith Griswold from Green Mountain Scientific. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, gentlemen. So I'd like to ask you sort of how you found your location here in Morris. I know you're right down the road. I wish I was set up to do this at home. I would have just had you guys come over and we could do this in my studio, but I came up a little short on my fundraiser. But tell us how you selected a location and maybe a little bit about building out your lab.
Well, you want to
take the
location part.
Yeah.
So Keith had a relationship with a gentleman that had some say he had like a building and he had some stuff going on that was pretty perfect for what we needed. And so basically at that point we, Keith kind of approached him and said, look, we'd like to lease this and, take it on. And yeah, it just kind of fell into place. Again, this is relationships from Hemp that we had, met previously. Again, our networking within the state was pretty vast just through the hemp stuff. So, Keith doing what he does, kind of knew the right people to approach for what we needed. And fortunately, it just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, I mean, location wise, it kind of made sense. I mean, there's an element of serendipity to it, but Morrisville is a great town to do business in.
Yeah,
it happens to be kind of in between Nate being up in Saint Albans, me being down in Brattleboro at the time. It was just a good kind of middle meeting ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful spot. You gave me a little tour before, and maybe you could tell us a little bit. First of all, I forgot to ask, can you tell us what type of license you guys are holding?
Oh, sure. We're a tier 3 manufacturer. But I also have my cultivation, and I upgraded from a tier 2 to a tier 3, just because we like to process what I grow. For our products, we know what's in it. It's always a risk taking on alien material. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's, if you're not growing it yourself, you just don't know exactly what happened with that material. Right. And so having more control over the material we were processing just was appealing, and so the tier 2, we ripped through that pretty quickly. It's not a lot of biomass at the end of the day. And so we upgraded to a tier 3 this year. And unfortunately, it was a little rough of a season. It was with all the flooding and the rains. We did take kind of a hit on the.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us about Sweet Lou's? Because that's on the list here, and I wanted to ask you about it.
Sure, yeah, for sure. Sweet Lou's was the company that I had formed when I was cultivating hemp and basically doing consultation work and things of that nature. It was my LLC. When this year we decided to merge it with GMS just because it made sense, it was all coming here anyway. And we just kind of wanted more of that integration. I don't want to say full vertical integration because it's a very overused term, I think, in this industry.
Yeah, but also it seems like if you're growing and manufacturing, I mean, going vertical, it seems like it makes sense.
It does, especially if you have the capabilities to do it and it's cost effective, and it was, so it just kind of worked out that way. So it was kind of the Sweet Lou's was, I don't want to say ended, but it was just it was a different chapter for this same farm. Right. Mm-hmm. And same practices, when I was with cultivating hemp, I was certified organic through NOFA and all these things. And it's literally the same practices that I approached with hemp is what I do now with the cannabis.
Well, living soil type of deal.
Yeah. And, clean, very, very clean. I don't, we use rain for irrigation. We're using strictly manures for nutrients, things of that nature, nothing, pesticide, none of that. It's all very straight, to the point, as natural as possible. Again, this is material that's going to be processed and concentrated and then put into edibles or vape carts or whatever we make. And the cleanliness of that is crucial. Mm-hmm. So being as natural and to the point as possible is is really the best practice. I don't go for the most aesthetically pleasing flower because I'm not selling flower. I'm growing something that I need to have strong cannabinoids and strong terpenes. And that's really, at the end of the day, the most important parts of what we're cultivating.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a great point because it seems like a lot of people don't know the difference between growing for smokable flower or growing for stuff you want to wash.
Now,
would you say that's a fair assessment?
I would absolutely say that's a fair assessment. I think a lot of people judge cannabis really by the way it looks. They don't, and I'm just as guilty. I'll see a nug that looks that's indoor grown, looks incredible. I'm like, oh my God, that I can't wait to, get into that. But there's so much more depth to what makes a really good smokable flower and what makes just good flower overall. There's a lot of things there. What are the minors? What are your terpene profiles? How was it grown? Was it grown in soil with a lot of heavy metals? Was it, or what was used for nutrients? I mean, there's a lot of variables here, and at the end of the day, I think a lot of times it's easy to forget those things. And especially, like I said, as manufacturers, those things mean far more to us than the color, than, how tight is the flower, all those things that, kind of matter in the smokable flower world.
And just for a shameless plug, I'm smoking on some Violet Fog here from my dude Legacy.
Awesome.
Damien DeForge, really nice herb.
Excellent.
And Keith, maybe I should just throw this one at you, since we're talking about sort of terpene profiles, and you mentioned the testing stuff earlier. I was going to save this for a little later, but I think I'm just going to throw that at you now. Tell us a little bit about the testing, because up until last year, it's like I'm still very much learning about this stuff, and I like a little bag appeal, but I've also smoked outdoor that looks like fucking regular weed, and then you put a lighter to it, you're like, holy shit, that's delicious. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your experience with testing, and maybe, I don't know which lab you guys are using, but I'd love to hear about your experiences here in Vermont with that.
Yeah, no, sure, Caleb. I'm sure, as we're all familiar with, testing cannabis is challenging. I mean, analytical testing at any capacity is a science. It's a relatively high-level science as well. But even in the context of cannabis, it's difficult. It really is a challenge. So much of it, there's so many components that kind of come together that make something as basic as potency testing on flower. I'm sure we've all heard, we sent two samples to, two different labs, or the same sample to two different labs, and we've gotten completely different results. I hear all that, and I've lived it, and I understand. Part of it with cannabis is it's a plant. Any type of botanical testing poses challenges from really just being able to sample correctly. I mean, I always think the elephant in the room with cannabis testing right now in the state is the sampling component. I mean, essentially, people talk about accurate results and consistency between labs, but it's the sampling plays such an important role. And
people pick their own samples, right?
Yes. Yeah. Which, I mean, ideally, you'd want a trained sampler that has no bias. Essentially, in theory, that sounds great. In practice, that's actually pretty difficult to achieve.
And there are states where they send out somebody from the state to select samples.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. No. And I know that's something that's been discussed at higher levels here in Vermont. But of course, rolling out a program like that is daunting. Will take time. Who will fund that? All elements that build into that. The other component too is testing. There's always a level of uncertainty that goes around any type of analytical measurement. So it's one thing is always repeat analysis. Being the proprietor of a testing lab and being able to run testing myself, we actually have potency testing here on site.
Cool.
That we run that supports our process control. So I have the advantage of collecting a lot of data. And unfortunately, that's really what you need. You need to collect, a number of data points. It's really difficult to make any type of a decision, that could direct your manufacturing processes based off one data point, and we all know that testing is expensive as well, too. So
Yeah, what, $500-600 for a full panel test?
yes.
Something like that. Yep.
Yeah. No,
For each cultivar.
Precisely. I mean, if it was up to us, if we had the finances to do it, I'd send every test out for 9 samples. I'd send every test out 9 times each time, so we could really get an understanding of what what the true results really are.
But you guys are testing your own stuff before you send it to the lab. Are you doing anything like that? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So it's certainly, as a manufacturer, one of the advantages that we have is to be able to test real time here.
And what are you doing? Liquid chromatography?
Yes, we have HPLC with UV detection, high pressure liquid chromatography.
Cool. Yeah, and I talked to Eric Kafka down at Spring in Hardwick. He also is doing a little gas chromatography, which I thought was cool. I'm not really super familiar with that, but it seems like a major advantage to be able to test your products before they go out to the lab. Then you have a baseline to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, precisely.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I want to ask you guys a little bit about, well, I want to get to the manufacturing processes, but I'm going to say that towards the end. I'd like to ask you about the application process and how that went for you guys, and maybe if you hired a lawyer to help you or if you guys did that on your own.
No, we did it on our own. So I handled the cultivation licensing, and Keith handled the manufacturing license. And from my end, for the cannabis, the cultivation licensing, it was pretty straightforward. We didn't run into really any issues. I knew what they wanted. They want security and multiple points of security. I was pretty even from last year on. I had everything fenced, and it's all being monitored through various cameras throughout my property, proximity alarms, floodlights, and all this other stuff. And the inspector that came through seemed really happy with it. Our storage areas we have it's a converted barn. It's a 10-stall barn that we've converted into a dry area. It's very secure. It's barred window and all that. So basically, they like that, I took security serious. And that was pretty much that. I mean, I really didn't have all that hard of a time with that process, and specifically because it was a renewal too. If we're talking last year, there were some challenges. It was a new process and it was new to me. Keith helped me with it as much as he could, and as much as we all knew how at that point, because again, it was new to everybody, including the CCB. So, it was a whole new experience. And I was one of the fortunate few that was actually licensed in the time frame that you could still cultivate, outside. So really, I have no complaints in the sense that they treated me fair. They were straight up with me what I needed, and they were happy with what I did, and that's pretty much that.
And it sounds like you had a little edge because maybe you've got this experience in the hemp game, and
yes.
I imagine you had to fill out some paperwork to get that license as well.
Honestly, so with hemp, it was a much process. And in fact, in 2018, 2019, it was literally send a $25 check, and that was it. There was like a small application. It was very simple. However, that did evolve pretty quickly. I think into 2020, actually, it became a much more in-depth process where you're doing aerial view photography of where you're cultivating and all this other stuff, which still applies here, within the legal market. So there was some advantage to from cultivating hemp previous, but yeah.
One thing I've been asking everybody about too is the banking and the insurance. Those seem like a little bit of I don't know what that means, but yeah, you want to touch on that at all?
Okay. the banking, I think everybody feels kind of the same about the banking here. I think I think there's some disadvantages, obviously, of not having a federal legalization when it comes to the banking aspects. And I think we have 2 options within the state, maybe 3 now, that we can work with. And I do think that it's good we at least have that. But I do think that there is some advantage being taken of this industry. I used to own my family used to own a restaurant in New York, and I don't remember having to pay a fee to have an account, and I don't remember having to, have to pay this, that, and the other thing, just because it was a business. And I kind of feel, and I know that there's a risk on their end too, because again, this isn't a federally legal thing. But, I also feel that there's some advantage being taken, I guess, at the end of the day.
I mean, with the bank account, having to, sign forms that say that we comply to an on-site inspection, by our banking officers. I mean, we don't have a business loan. It's really nothing more of a relationship besides just having a business checking account. And, we have to comply to on-site inspections. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard this same comment from other people that own different types of businesses that say we've never had to pay any type of fees like that to run a business.
Yeah.
And I understand the federal illegality still and the Controlled Substances Act. I'm pretty up to snuff on that, but it does still feel like, there's someone dipping into your pockets a little bit, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think we all kind of feel that way to one degree or another. It just seems a little, taken advantage. We feel a little taken advantage of. I think as a whole, that I think retailers actually have it a little worse than manufacturers do. Again, I'm not a retailer. I may be wrong on that, but I think that there's a little bit more to it for them than it is just even for guys like us. So
yeah, I think you're right with the 280E stuff. And not being able to write off a lot of those costs that a normal business could write off, which Tim Fair tells me could raise your effective tax rate to about 70%, which seems fucking crazy.
Yeah, it is. It really is. At the end of the day, we're all business owners. We're all trying to make our mark, to be successful. And the more of these financial hurdles that are thrown at these businesses, the harder that becomes. And it's, there's just got to be some kind of give and take here, I think, that we just haven't found yet.
How do you feel about the taxes? I mean, look, like 20% tax on cannabis. I've always been curious. I always thought that taxes were sort of a moral hazard thing. Like the worse something is, the more they tax it, sort of like they did with vape carts when people started getting sick and they put the 92% vape tax.
Oh, I know.
And I'm hoping we could talk about the vape tax for sure. But, if we're doing moral hazards, shouldn't alcohol be taxed higher than cannabis?
Yeah. Let me put it this way. Okay. I'm a recovering alcoholic myself. Okay. Caleb, you and I have had conversations, right? And ultimately I can tell you, alcohol came pretty damn close to ruining my life, for good, no comebacks. And, I can tell you cannabis has never done that. Cannabis has opened a lot of doors for me, and it's done wonders I have family that is transitioned from alcohol to cannabis, and they're thriving as human beings now. I just feel, and again, I'm not trying to get preachy. I'm not trying to,
That's okay. That's okay. Preach away, my friend. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we're looking at a tax based off risk, right? To your point, yeah. Alcohol should be way up there, and cannabis really shouldn't. I mean, at the end of the day, there's study after study proving so. I mean, if we're going to just look at hard facts and the science behind it all, at the end of the day, there's plenty of that out there. Just people don't really, some people don't want to look at it or accept what is true.
Well, and it's wild, especially in a state like Vermont, where one of our biggest industries is alcohol.
Right. Right.
And I forgot to do this. I got a shameless plug. Oh, it's my man Keith down at Edwards. Keith's a great guy. He's got a tier 1 outdoor license, really super hardworking guy. I got your shirt on. Thanks for stopping by, Keith. Cool. What have we
That's
got?
awesome.
So, yeah, he's a really good, salt of the earth type of dude who really just busts his ass by himself.
Awesome. You know,
by himself, running a tier 1 out.
Most of the cultivators I've met in this state, that's who they are at the end of the day. They're hardworking people just trying to make their mark. Literally, I would say 95% of the companies in this state are those people to a T.
You're one of those people. I remember being at that event at the High Country, and we just we just ran back and forth taking phone calls the whole fucking time. And I've met a lot of super hardworking people in this industry, and I want to shout out to all the Vermont cannabis companies, because you lazy stoners really work your fucking asses off. But you in particular, Nate, I've really not seen a lot of people hustle that hard, and it's impressive. And I don't know when you find time to sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, man, it's when you love what you're doing, right? You never work a day. I think that's how the saying goes. Ultimately, I think we had the same conversation. I have a very understanding spouse who very much supports what I'm doing, and my kids support what I do. Everybody at home's happy. They see me just enough. I think it's a good mix of
don't want to see dad too much.
You're right. The older they get, right? They're coming into teen years, so the hour or two I see them at night just seems to be just right. So I think there's just a combination of all the right things happening, especially, again, the supportive family piece is huge, right? Because it's hard to be away or, head out for work every day. If, you have a spouse sitting at home, they go, when are you going to be home? That kind of thing.
Where the fuck you going?
Right. That whole spiel at the end, that makes it challenging. But, if you have someone at home applauding what you're doing and appreciating the hard work you're trying to bring to the table every day, then it makes it that much easier. And I will say, working with Keith too, Keith sets a bar for hard work that's absurd. Like this.
Are you serious?
Lives here.
This guy's outworking you?
Yeah. This dude is machine. I don't know how he's here on the weekends. I mean, this guy, he's unbelievable. So for as hard as I work, he's doing it 3 times harder, I can assure you. So it's, we just have that mindset, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And we want to succeed, and I do want to throw this out there is, we represent Forbans too. I represent their outside.
Oh, don't jump the gun, Nate.
I got to jump the gun a little bit.
Okay, fine. I got the sticker up here.
I saw that. Yeah. I saw that.
Please tell us about your relationship with Nick and Angela, because it's been super great reconnecting with them. Nick is from my hometown. We grew up together, and we were buying weed from Nick back in high school, and we didn't even know it. And so it's kind of amazing to reconnect with him. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, so really, I was going to touch on that with is, Keith manufactures their product lines. Most of them. Gaston is now doing a rosin cart, which shout out to Gaston's too. They're an amazing company. And Keith's doing, the vape carts, and we're getting ready to do their gummy line. And, there's the nanotech and the tincture set. I mean, all these other things that are coming, that's all on Keith. My job is for all the outside retail sales, whether it's flower pre-rolls or whatever products are being made. It's my job to sell those and get them into retailers. I can tell you it's probably one of the easier jobs I've had. It's not a hard sale for Forbans products. It's not selling snow to Eskimos. I can tell you that. So, but ultimately it does. There's a lot of times between our company, our needs, what I do for us and our sales out there plus theirs. It's a busy week. Again, for Keith and I, but we like it that way. It's better this way than sitting here going, what's our next move? What do we do now? And where do we go from here? So I would much rather be this than anything else.
Mm-hmm. And I see you guys just dropped a new tincture or something.
Yeah. The Forbans tincture set. Yeah. It's,
and I want to throw this over to Keith, because I'm hoping Keith will tell us a little bit about your manufacturing process, what kind of gear you're running, and all of that type of shit.
Yeah, sure, Caleb. So, our entire manufacturing program was really designed, based on past experiences with the hemp industry. We need diversity. We're relying a lot on automation, trying to keep overhead low, ensure that we could really manufacture. I don't want to say every type of product out there, but the cannabis industry is competitive. So having diversity, having basically the ability to put cannabis into unique product applications, that's extremely important to us. And then the automation allows us to scale up and maintain consistency as well too. So, a big focus of ours is moving into really has been kind of our mainstay is emulsion technology. How do we incorporate cannabis being an oil, of course, lipophilic, loves grease. How do we incorporate that into water-based products?
What did you say? Lipophilic?
Lipophilic. Yeah.
Can you explain what that means, please, Keith?
Sure. Lipophilic is it's a property of a substance or a compound that essentially just means that it's kind of like the concept of like dissolves like. Oil and water don't mix. Everybody's heard that. So lipophilic describes oil. So basically greasy, anything that has long carbon chains on it is essentially lipophilic versus hydrophilic, which is essentially exactly how it sounds. It's likes water, can dissolve.
Water, hydro. I understand that.
Yes. So lipophilic, essentially just the opposite of hydrophilic.
Cool. Thank you for explaining that. I like to stop sometimes when people say words that I don't know. And, I assume if I don't know them, then most of my viewers definitely don't know them.
Yeah. No, but a big part of our philosophy on the manufacturing side is really not to reinvent the wheel. Emulsion technology, encapsulation technology, it's existed for decades, if not over a century, in other industries, pharmaceutics, food and beverage. So a lot of it, we just essentially take technology, inspiration for technology that's in other industries that we have experience in, and we lift and shift and see how we can apply it here in the cannabis industry.
Lift and shift. I like that, Keith. Yeah. And I still remember that guy up at the high country who kept hitting you up for extra samples, Nate.
Oh, the nano stuff. Oh, yes. That guy actually, let me talk about that real quick, because that was actually was kind of cool. Oh, wait, I'm thinking of another guy. You're right. Okay, yeah.
No, he just kept coming over for more samples, and you're such a professional. You just gave him another sample and sent them home. But
yeah, I forgot about that guy.
It seemed like maybe you got a good product there, because that guy just kept coming back and wanted more.
Yeah, he did. What I was thinking of, though, was there was a gentleman there with throat cancer, and his big thing was edibles took too long, and the smoking obviously wasn't great for his situation. And I had obviously a few samples of that day, and I told him, I said, you should really try this. I said, I find it, for me, it acts quickly, and you don't need a whole lot, and just throw a few drops under your tongue. And within 20 minutes, that guy had come right back, and he's like, where can I buy this? This is excellent. He's like, I as someone that's dealing with this situation, the throat cancer, it's very challenging for me to find something that can just, act quickly, and is it hurting me, and all these other things. So that's when it really started appealing to me, is when I heard somebody that genuinely has this problem, and then 20 minutes later he has relief. That was huge. That's when I really started respecting, not that I didn't respect it previously, but I really started, wow, this is special. This is great. This is something big,
And is there a scientific explanation for why those nano emulsions kick in faster than eating a regular gummy?
Yeah, no, so bioavailability, excuse me, there's just an enormous increase in bioavailability by essentially just reducing the particle size, of the oil that you're ingesting. So, I mean, one way to look at it is, you have a gummy. It takes a little while to kick in, depending on how full your stomach is when you ate before. You have a digestion period, and then it's essentially as it moves through your system, whether it's absorbing through the stomach or your large and small intestines, by creating small particle size, essentially emulsifying down to 100 nanometers, it increases the absorption. We also, a lot of our focus too is partnering with the right vendors. So we use a lot of co-ingredients that actually increase bioavailability as well.
What are those ingredients, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, they're just like not novel medium chain triglycerides, like something as basic as coconut oil, done with slight modifications. And again, this is all, ancient pharmaceutical established research, and applying it within this industry. It just allows for the delivery through like your lymphatic system to be increased.
I like those MCT oils too, because one thing that I don't like about tincture is that it has alcohol a lot of the times, and I'm trying to not drink alcohol.
Right.
So having some kind of formulation that doesn't involve alcohol is really nice for someone in my position.
Yeah. No, I and trust me, I get that, man. I do. I understand that. Even I won't even use mouthwash with alcohol. You know what I mean? So tinctures and nano and MCT, nano is different than an MCT style tincture. But yeah, to your point, it's just a much more diverse product. You can do so much with nano. Not just a drop. You add it to a beverage. You want to, especially if you're a non-drinker like me and yourself, and you want to socialize with people that are drinking. A few drops in that, you don't feel so awkward. And when you're hanging out with others that are partaking, there's a lot of diversity to this product.
I do like tricking myself into thinking that I'm drinking.
Yeah,
I'll be drinking seltzers and shit. I'll pretend it's a vodka soda.
Yeah, and it does help to a certain degree.
Yeah, my brain is easily tricked. So
yeah, I do.
I want to ask you if either of you guys. So we've come a long way in extraction in the last 20. I don't know. I've watched dudes almost burn their trailer down with doing open blasting and butane extractions and stuff like that. Yeah. I'd like to ask you guys, and I don't know who wants to touch this, but I'd like to ask you guys about this sort of the evolution of cannabis extraction and maybe distillation and all of that shit, CO2 extraction.
Yeah. So there's a number of kind of go-to extraction methods that are popular right now in the industries. You have CO2, supercritical fluid extraction, like we use, ethanol-based extraction, cold ethanol, and then of course liquid petroleum gas like propane or butane, of course, are the most common. The chemistry behind it all, it's basic extraction of botanicals. I mean, we've been doing it for millennia, essentially. The advances are really in the engineering of the equipment, without a doubt, whether we're starting to move towards closed loop systems, UL rated equipment. So it's
what's that?
So UL rated is essentially tested, tried and true and tested. Like our CO2 equipment is UL rated, and it just means that the equipment was tested by the manufacturer, so it can withstand the pressures that we have to reach throughout the process. So basically, just that stamp, that seal of approval.
So it's like an ISO certification, but for equipment.
Precisely.
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, without a doubt, that's really where the advances have gone. And I mean, as mainstream manufacturers start to come around to cannabis, that's where we've really seen the uptick in quality equipment, without a doubt. So just access to equipment is much better these days.
I've also heard that some people complaining about low quality gas and how that affects their extraction process. Is this guy? I saw a picture of a guy holding a jar up, and he said, "Look at this he could tell just by looking at, I don't know if it was distillate or something. It looked like distillate, but he was like, the gas sucks. And I was like, oh, you can tell just by looking at the final product how the gas was. Do you have any comments about that?
That's interesting. We've never experienced that. We actually use Hahn Welding here in Vermont. It's been an excellent gas supplier.
Yeah.
But, just knowing inherently about the process, it's a purification process. I mean, that's all extraction really is: purification, refinement. So, any processing aids that you're using, any type of contaminants that you're bringing in with your processing aids, now you're adding them to your final product. So the idea of using, clean processing aids, making sure that your equipment is clean, it's critical to reaching a great end product.
And one great comparison I heard was that it's sort of like gas. You've got your 91 and your 93 and your super something. Yeah, I was like, oh, that makes sense because we're talking about gas, and this is also gas.
Right. Yeah.
I like when people talk to me like I'm stupid.
Oh boy.
Look, I'm getting towards the end of the list here. I do want to ask you about product registration. Did we touch on that at all? Because I know a lot of people have had different issues with product registration, waiting times, and on top of like the testing time. Although you guys, most of those complaints have come from people doing flower, who have to wait for the testing and then wait for the product registration. You guys, it seems like maybe you're in a slightly different boat, but I'm curious if you've had any hiccups with that stuff.
We have not yet, and that's really because a lot of the work we've done has been white label. And when you're registering a product, they really want to see the label and everything else that comes with that. And when we offer a white label product, it's literally a no label product. And then until the retailer takes it on, and then they add their spin on it, they register it, et cetera. I don't think we've heard of anybody having any issues registering our products in regard to times and all that. It doesn't seem like there's been a whole lot there. I will say, that we are getting ready to have a shelf ready product soon that we're calling Simple. It's just a labeled product. It's very basic, and we will start that process ourselves very soon. So I guess we can just get back to you on that one and just our experiences for the time being. But ultimately, to your point, that we have heard a lot of varying timeframes.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
Very mixed feedback on it. Certain organizations getting their registration spun around in 24 hours. Some back and forth lasting up to.
I've heard up to a month, 5 weeks.
Yeah. I've actually heard longer than that even. But I mean, again, I don't know the variables that were particular for that situation.
Most states don't even have product registration. This is
I've heard that too. I'd
like to throw this comment up too. Sorry to cut you off, Nate. Chef Rodney, that's Rodney Leinhart, a guy. He was on my show a while back. Thanks for watching, Rodney. I appreciate you, man.
Hey, Rodney.
Rodney's good shit. Yeah.
But I don't know the specifics on everybody's stuff. It could be a lot of things, down to at that time they were, registering. Maybe CCB didn't have as many people as they do now, or, whatever. I just, I don't know. Like I said, we're getting ready to find out though. And hopefully it's not a long, painful process. So we'll see.
Hopefully you didn't fuck around and find out.
Exactly.
Cheers, boys. Thanks for tuning in, Rodney. It's great to hear from you, man. I got a couple of things left. One of these was for Keith, because you mentioned this earlier about doing concentrates. And one thing that I talked to Jeff Rawson, who's a PhD scientist from Harvard, who was talking about some of these distillation processes where they might get the heavy metals out, but the pesticides might actually be able to pass through a distillation process and be even more concentrated if they came out on the other end. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, no, it certainly is. In fact, for the majority of pesticides that are on the current hit list, They're essentially small organic molecules, just like THC and CBD are. So they're going to go through the extraction process the same way. They're going to get extracted up into the crude, and then, if you're doing short path distillation, they'll boil over with the cannabinoids as well too. So, kind of doing your standard refinement procedures isn't adequate to remediate for majority of pesticides.
Mm. And some of the dangerous ones seem like Eagle 20, which myclobutanol or something, which I've read about, which turns into cyanide or something when you ignite it. Is that
smokes? Yeah. Canada was the first to really lean into that when I think there was like an outbreak of it because of some employee that used it, wasn't supposed to, but used it on a very large harvest, and it got into a lot of products up there, and then it really got bad in regards to products being pulled and just tracking and tracing where it all came from. It was a big deal, but then a lot of that stuff's really just not good. We shouldn't be using that stuff on things we're eating and smoking, anyway. It's just, it's not.
Well, I mean, Eagle 20, like on the cultivation side, how it could make it into like next generation of harvest.
Oh yeah,
that's
it comes
so that can pass along to the offspring or something.
Yes.
Huh. And I'm curious because, Keith, you mentioned something earlier about manufacturers doing their own safety studies on their equipment. And I feel like with chemical fertilizers and pesticides and things of that nature, the manufacturers are also doing their own safety studies. And, like we saw with Teflon back in the day. I don't know if you're familiar with the Teflon lawsuits, but
very much.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't necessarily trust those companies to do their own research. And although doing independent research would be very costly for someone else to do, and they'd have to be seriously interested in that. And
it's a scary thing. I do think it's important we talk about how important testing really is, because having full transparency on everything as best as possible before something goes to market is crucial for the health and safety of the general public. And pesticides, things of that nature. And I understand it's tough when you're growing things outside specifically, and you're exposing your crop to just anything and everything, and you want to protect it. But at the end of the day, it's just not worth, what problems that stuff bring to the table afterwards just to save a few plants.
Now, Keith, one thing I wanted to ask you about is if you're familiar with any of these types of remediation technologies, ozone remediation. I know they're doing X-ray remediation, things like that. I met a couple of these companies out in Vegas, and I didn't even know they existed until November of last year. And I was curious if you know anything about that technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was going to chime in and say, as terrible as Eagle 20 is, I mean, it's not a complete death sentence. Because remediation procedures do exist, and there's a number of technologies that are being touted, which, in full honesty, I'm not completely familiar with, like the ones that you mentioned, ozone. One of the most go-to methods for, say, Eagle 20 remediation is you do have to end up into an extract, that you can't smoke the flower. But once you're in an extract concentrate phase, you could do basically flash chromatography, which is essentially, column chromatography, where you're essentially just running the resin over running the extract over a resin that has an affinity for Eagle 20, so you can remove it. It's a little bit of a messy procedure. But just basic flash chromatography is a proven way to remediate.
So it'll hold up those Eagle 20 particles, and everything else will like drip down.
Precisely. Grab onto it, push everything else out.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, and that was a cool analogy that Eric Kafka made from Spring when he explained it, like the way the chromatography works. I really like that interview. Eric, if you're listening, thanks, man. Cool. So I'm running out of shit. Well, I gotta call CryoCure here. I got an interview with CryoCure coming up. I don't know.
Awesome.
Let me ask you this. Say, for instance, that you got a contaminated product. Could that fuck up your lab in any way? Is there any chance, like, or how would you, I don't know. I know, like, when people's grow rooms get powdery mildew, they got to take everything down and clean the shit.
Right.
Yeah. Can that happen in an extraction lab? And if it did, how would you deal with something like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll actually mention, there's a couple of things that we have to put in place in order to protect ourselves from such an occurrence. One is testing it's crucial and it's absolutely, necessary. However, when we take material in, I say it can't just be the end all be all on the test results that we receive. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach.
Are the products tested before they come to you?
Yeah. So
they should be.
Yeah. So every flower.
They're supposed to be, right?
Correct.
We won't accept it unless there is, but again,
I say,
okay. I was just curious. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
absolutely. But we also have to take into consideration the source. Do we trust the source? Do they have a reputation of, perhaps using a pesticide in the past? Like, it can't, the test result is critical, but we also have to take other components under consideration as well, too, really to fully protect ourselves. But hey, say if something did slip in the doors and we contaminated our extraction system, yeah, we would find it out ultimately when we tested the end concentrate, and it would shut us down.
So the product you're getting is tested, but then you're going to extract it and make a concentrate, and then you're going to test again, right? Because we talked about this before.
Yep.
And so you'll notice if something like that happened.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Especially in the concentrate, if that somehow made it through the flower testing process, right? I mean, maybe it was just residual, very slight, and it just didn't pick it up. Whatever, he's going to concentrate that. So regardless, it's going to now at that point for sure show up, So yeah, that secondary round of testing is also very, very important.
And we're talking parts per million.
Yeah.
Contamination is a problem. I mean, that's hard to clean. That's that requires quite a bit of cleaning.
Yeah. How do you clean up? Say your whole lab got contaminated with some pesticide. How do you clean that shit out?
Yeah. So we have to run our in-place cleaning cycle 10 times. A normal cycle that we would run once, we'd have to run up to 10 times.
What do you clean that with?
So we clean the CO2 equipment with ethanol.
So alcohol, yeah.
Yeah, basically just alcohol, run it through, and then we have to test the rinse extracts to make sure that they're clean, and then
10 times?
Yeah, we have to run the cycle 10 times.
So basically you're just like watering it down over and over again until it's wow.
Yeah. Basically solution is dilution.
Yeah. How long is that process take?
Oh, from start to finish, including getting the third party analysis, it's 2 months.
Oh, so you also send the results off to a third party?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have to get that verification. So
do you have to, or is that just something you do to satisfy yourself?
Well, so we don't do pesticide testing in house. That requires a little.
Okay.
Than we have. So yeah, we do it. We have to do third party for pesticides.
Yeah, cool. Is there a lab you'd like to shout out that does that for you, or I don't know anybody that does that shit.
For the
general
testing or for
pesticide testing.
Oh, we work with both labs.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I went to high school with Adam Bouchard, who works there at BIA, who's a phenomenal guy. And so we, and we really like the Onward people too. I mean, it's just we think it's fair, to just try to work with both as much as we can.
Yeah.
Have you ever talked to Endyne?
Yes.
Did we? Oh yeah, that's right. Early on.
Yes.
They don't do full panel though, I don't believe.
I tried to get in touch with them. I saw they got licensed. and there's only 3 labs. I try to talk to all
Yeah.
of them. But
Yeah.
Endyne just wouldn't get back to me for some reason. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, so Endyne's a pretty good facility, but they are they're like a water testing environmental lab that's actually part of a chain. So they have a location in New Hampshire as well, I believe. So cannabis, by all means, is not their mainstay.
Yeah.
So,
and again, without that full panel, I mean, almost everything we test has to have a full panel. So, I mean, we wouldn't really have a need.
And one thing I wanted to mention, just now that you're talking about these full panel tests, and I don't know if either of you has a thought on this, but some people who are trying to grow a diverse range of plants are saying, oh, this is just going to be too costly for testing.
Yeah.
And we're only going to be able to grow like 1 or 2 different cultivars.
I mean, honestly, my first year I grew 1 strain, and that was kind of the reason. I had a very shoestring budget, and I didn't want to do 5 different strains and drop almost $4,000 on testing. So I adapted and I did what I could. I grew that 1 strain, and you just work within the confines you're given. I do think there's a certain level of importance to having, what Keith said earlier, multiple data points on anything that you're going to market with. I also don't know how necessary it is for a tier 1 with, gosh, I don't even know what a tier 1 could grow, even indoor or outdoor, but like say 100 or 50.
I believe it's 125 plants outdoor, and I believe a tier 1 indoor is 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's 1,000. I don't know how many plants you can put in 1,000 square. Again, I'm not an indoor guy, but
it depends how you prioritize your space.
Sure. I don't know how necessary it is for if they're doing 5 strains and they're a real small area to do 5 different tests. But again, I don't know. I mean, that's just my thought on it.
It's going to be an interesting question, and it does seem like. I like the testing aspect, but it does seem like that could get really expensive really quick.
Oh, it does.
If you're trying to grow a diverse amount of plants, and a lot of the guys I know who have been doing this a long time, they like that biodiversity. They like to have that different range of cultivars, even if they're only I know a guy who's got 350 square feet, and he's got 8 or 9 strains in there, and they're all great. But that's what are we looking at now? That's $4,000, $5,000 in testing.
Exactly.
Cost prohibitive,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a tough topic, right? Because there's kind of plus and minuses to either side on how you look at it. So it's really tough to take a definitive side on pro versus non-pro. I guess.
Well, that's why I just like to hear everyone's opinions, because it's important to get that range for me as well,
sure.
Multiple data points, as Keith pointed out earlier. I'd like to hear how everyone is feeling about it. And, I draw my own conclusions from the range of opinions that I get. And cool. Did you bring a guitar, Nate?
I didn't, man. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm gonna get you back on in a few months.
Yeah, no, for sure. This was great. We would love to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
If you'd have us. And
hold up.
Try my best to.
Shameless plug. Let me take that banner down. That looks stupid. There we go. Boom. I'm with Nate Liberty and Keith Griswold from Green Mountain Scientific. It's been a pleasure speaking to you guys. I always leave the last word for my guests. So if there's anything we missed, any shameless plugs or shout outs that you want to send, now is the time. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Keith, for being here. It's been a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Thank you, Caleb.
Really.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We appreciate what you're doing also in just overall in the industry. There was definitely a vacuum that you filled. So thank you. I know this is hard. It's a lot you've taken on. So thank you. So shout out to you for what you're doing here.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Shout out to Forbans, of course. We love Ange and Nick. Obviously, we work very closely with them. Thank you to all the retailers we work with every day. That
You want to shout any out? I forgot to ask about. Sorry to interrupt your last word,
Sure.
but if you want to tell us where you're in stores, I meant to ask that. Yeah,
sure. At Valley Mead, Ninth State, Capital Cannabis,
Mountain Girl,
absolutely Mountain Girl.
Sunday
Drive in Woodstock. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so upset myself. I forget anybody.
I put you on the spot, Nate.
Yeah. No, Lamoille County, everybody, man, everybody that we work with, and you know who you are. Thank you. We really greatly appreciate your support.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I hate to interrupt the last word. Yeah,
it's all good, man. It's all good. But thank you for having us,
dude. It's my pleasure. Keith, you got anything left you'd like to dump out before we get out of here?
Yeah, I guess just look out for our retail ready brand that's coming out soon. Simple Cannabis.
Yeah,
gonna have a nice diverse range of products, excellent quality, and a very cool logo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Word up. It's Nate Liberty. It's Keith Griswold, Green Mountain Scientific. Thank you guys so much for being here. Look, we'll blow this up. Hey, we cut Keith out. Yeah. There we go. Hey, I'm your host, Caleb Teskey, reminding you that the devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Thank you for watching.